my guest is here. Okay, he's here. Fantastic timing, Michael. Fantastic timing. Couldn't have timed it better. Michael Maloof. He is former security policy analyst in the Office of Secretary of Defense, author, and regular contributing analyst for RT and other media outlets. He has nearly 30 years of federal service experience in the U.S. Department of Defense. How you doing, my man? You doing okay today?
So far, so good. A little
Good.
early.
It is a little. I know it's early. I know it's early. People ask me, why the hell do you have to show this early? I just stuck with the same time. I had gotten so used to getting up at the time, I just stuck with it.
Why not?
But I'm glad that you could join me.
Thank you.
So, just to give a little context to the audience, during the Victory Day celebrations that were taking place in Moscow, again, I would have loved to go to those. I think that should be a world holiday, but whatever. During the celebrations, a gang of cokeheads got together, and I don't know if they were doing coke. I'm partially joking, but the West Europeans got together. Macron, Starmer, Merz, I think that's all of them, and they talked to Donald Trump, and they said, "We demand," which is shocking to the losing side, right? "We demand that there's a 30-day ceasefire that's unconditional." So you expect Russia to accept a 30-day ceasefire where you can continuously give weapons, give money, give intelligence, give arms, allow them to reshuffle their military, maybe rotate their military, maybe come up with new plans, um, and you believe that Russia's going to allow that? Okay. So Putin comes out and says, "Look, I'm not interested in a 30-day ceasefire. That's nonsense. What I will do is have talks in Istanbul 2.0." And he said two very important things. One, we'll pick up where we left off with new realities being acknowledged. So that is something similar to Minsk with the new realities of the new territories. And it is unconditional, meaning we're not stopping anything. The war continues while we have these talks, if indeed we have these talks. Now, Zelensky initially comes out and points out, says, "I will meet you in Istanbul," because Donald Trump effectively said, "Hey, that's a good idea. You better go. You better go." And so, "I will meet you in Istanbul, providing there's a ceasefire." And then somewhere along the way, he walked back the ceasefire part. So, "I will meet you in Istanbul, but I need to talk to Putin directly." Now, nobody postulated him talking to Putin directly. They postulated, "You'll send your team, we'll send my team, and we will hammer out some kind of agreement and negotiation." Give me your take on this kind of diplomatic warfare that is taking place um, in these camps. And what do you think Trump falls into this? Do you think, all things being equal, Trump does want to enter this war? He just can't figure out a way to do it while saving face.
Well, I think the display by the Europeans is amateurish, and they are groping for positioning and relevancy in this process because they know they've basically been uh, uh, left out, and they're scampering to have some influence into that process, which to date has been negligible. And Trump and Putin intend to proceed with their approach. The fact that that Putin called for negotiations without uh, a ceasefire beforehand, which is what the Europeans demanded, I think displays the fact that he's consistent in his demands that he's always had on the table all along, and he is continuing to proceed with his approach. And you have the Europeans and Zelensky jumping all around, knowing that they're losing virtually daily. Daily, they're losing more and more. And Trump has no intention of continuing to arm the Ukrainians when he's trying to bolster things here at home at this point. And he's trying to, and he, declared victory with the Houthis, and he's trying to settle things in Gaza. So, and really try to mend things back at home here. So there's really no budget to continue the senseless contributions that we've been giving in the tens of billions of dollars to the to the Ukrainians under the Biden administration. But as far as Trump is concerned, he doesn't want to enter the war. He wants to resolve it. Um, he does not intend to get into the fray. And I think that if my thinking is that Putin could order a temporary ceasefire once negotiations begin, if in fact they're going to occur. Then maybe there could be a lull in the fighting until which time they have hammered out something. I don't know. That's one possibility. I think Zelensky was not planning to really show up until Trump ordered him to. So I think there's I think the Europeans and Zelensky have run out of cards. They have no negotiating and leverage. They have none.
Well, apparently they're sanctioning, well, a few things. Trump is sending weapons. I mean, he approved $50 million in weapons. He approved or pushed Germany to, I guess, give their stocks of Patriot missiles. And they have been firing HIMARS. I mean, they fired like 500 missiles just before Victory Day. And some of those were HIMARS missiles, meaning needing the United States intelligence in order to fire. So they've still been doing this stuff. And Donald Trump has still been arming Ukraine. Maybe not to the degree that Joe Biden was, but he's still doing it. Let you want to comment on that?
I hear reports of that. I think it's a dwindling affair, and more and more
yeah.
Say again.
Yeah, 50 million is not much compared to
No.
hundreds of billions that we were given before.
No, I think it's dwindling down, and I think it's going to. I think if the Europeans want to restock Ukraine, he's probably telling them, go right ahead, but don't count on us.
Yeah.
Will we restock you? Let's say Germany. That's iffy, you know. So well because the Europeans, for their NATO responsibilities, rely mostly on U.S. goods,
right?
U.S. ordnance, and so what will the United States backstop them? That's unknown. I haven't heard any commentary on that whatsoever. But I think Trump's point is clear. He wants to lessen this war, get on with business. His approach now is to make friends in spite of their intractable differences and ideologies by offering business deals. Mm-hmm. Clearly, I mean, we're seeing this as his number one approach now. He seemed to signal that in his explanation of how he got the Indians and the Pakistanis to cease fire, and because he said, if you don't stop, we're not going to trade with you at all.
Right.
Well, that's pretty. You know, everybody in the world relies on the United States market. Period. Yeah. Developing countries can't afford what these people make and offer, and China, for example, could never make up with alternate markets what it's losing to the U.S.
Yes, they could. Yes, they could. I'm sorry, I so disagree with that. Yes, they could.
Other countries can't afford it. They just can't afford it.
China wasn't the one that was markets were flipping out. China wasn't the one whose bond markets were flipping out, nor was, I mean, Scott Bensent behind the scenes talking to investors was saying, this is unsustainable. We can't keep this up. Trump was the one that was backing down off the tariffs. He is the one that took those things down to 10% originally. And if you've seen the tariff deal, Trump got nothing out of that. It was like 30% to 10%, but it was all for squat.
You're looking in a very narrow way here at what was. There's a larger picture here.
Please.
We've also got to include intellectual properties, non-tariff limitations, barriers that these countries impose, VAT taxes, and all the rest. Each country, of course, is different. But with China, I know the IPs are very, very critical, and I've seen it myself in the past where they've insisted upon having your source code and knowing your plans and what have you if they're going to do business. And they want 51% of ownership in a company, any joint venture that might be set up in their country. That's I think things are going to have to change, because that's a losing proposition for even U.S. companies. They're not going to want to invest any longer. And you're seeing Apple now switching out of China, going into more friendly India for its production. They cannot sustain the limitations that are imposed on U.S. companies. So I think the broader perspective is that while there's a 90-day deal on lowering the tariffs, during that 90 days, there's going to be further discussions for longer term agreements on other things such as IP and what have you. And that's what I envision.
Michael, we deeply disagree with this, but I don't want to dwell on the China thing. I don't want to dwell on this.
It's all speculation
Yeah.
at this point on both of our
until we see it, right? Until we see
until we see it. Yes, yes.
I am super curious with the negotiation.
I believe in the glass being half full as opposed to being half empty in this case.
That's fair. No, I accept that. I totally accept that. What do you think these negotiations would even look like between Ukraine and Russia? I mean, for one, Ukraine, by law, is not even supposed to negotiate with Russia because Zelensky passed a law saying he can't do it. But let's assume for the moment that he goes. I don't know why he is going to Istanbul, but okay, whatever. What do you think that negotiation even looks like? I mean, the way that Russia is talking about it is we pick up where we left off before in 2022. So they're putting a context to the negotiations. Basically, these are the things that you agreed upon. So these are the things that we expect you on some level to stick with the exception of these additional territories. Do you think that they could even get a deal under these terms, with the Europeans doing everything in their power to effectively kill the deal?
Well, it's not going to probably be the Europeans. I think it'll be the Zelensky himself. If you're going to continue on with Istanbul, from Istanbul 1 into Istanbul 2 as 2.0, they're basically going to start from the negotiating point where they were back then. But now we got added territories, as you said, and Russia has already made it clear they will not. That's non-negotiable. They intend to keep them. And they've been annexed, and they will keep them. So the question then remains: what does Zelensky have as any leverage to change any of that? None. He has none. His troops that have been surrounded in Kursk, and Belgorod, they're going to be kicked out or killed, and all he can do is sign on the paper. But if he does that, as I told Sputnik Global last week, that he probably will be dead within an hour after he gets back home. Because he will encounter the wrath of the Azov group and other elements within his own country that want to continue the conflict. But with what? The Europeans want to go on to 2030 to give them time to gear up their military production, domestic military production. 5 years? Well, things can change by then. And besides that, they can't catch up. The United States is not going to help them. So I think Zelensky is really caught between the rock and hard place. He has really little choice but to make an agreement, stop the fighting, and get on with life, and try to salvage what he has, and maybe ask Donald Trump for political asylum.
See, this is right there, and I'm glad you mentioned that. I hadn't even thought of that in the context of the Istanbul agreements. This is why Putin said I want direct talks. This is exactly why.
Yeah.
Because if you remember, Donald Trump was like, dude, you have no cards. You have no cards to play.
Oh, he's
Your
right.
military is about to collapse. You have no cards. He said, at least with me, we can make this larger than Ukraine. We could, because we can have business deals with Russia. We can talk about sanction relief. We can talk about all this other stuff, with Ukraine being one item. If you're having direct talks, then your talk is specifically about the war, and you've lost that war. Oh, that is such a good point. That is such a good point.
Yeah, he's already lost it. But if Zelensky can survive, then they can go on to the next stage where Trump can work with both Ukraine and Russia, and they might be able to get commercial enterprise deals going, but not come to any solution on getting territory back. I think that's done. It's over. And now Russia wants the rest of Donbass. The only way they're going to get it is by taking it. It's not going to work out, and Zelensky is going to disagree. So what does he do? They can continue the fight, and I think that's why I think for both sides' purposes, they really don't want an agreement right now for different reasons. But I think the fighting could continue even after these talks, maybe, unless Trump is able to be there and get them and help guide them. Now he's hinting at showing up.
I saw that.
So let's see what happens. Now that can make a big difference. But if you leave it just to Zelensky and Putin will walk all over Zelensky. There's just no and Zelensky will just walk out.
Yeah. So what is the thought? They fight up until the point where the military gets to the point of creaking and breaking, at which point a deal is made. Like, meaning no deal can be made at the point where Ukraine believes its military is still on the battlefield and still can fight. And
that's unachievable. Yeah. But the best that they can hope for is trying to retain what they've got. Now, if the war is to continue, Moscow will definitely try to take the rest of Donbass and Luhansk, and I think they may go to the Dnieper River and maybe take Odessa. If that happens, that makes it even worse for Ukraine, because they will then have no access to the sea at all for exports.
Wouldn't they have to take Kiev in order to denazify? Meaning, if the objective is, all right, we want a normal, neutral Ukraine, and that normal, neutral Ukraine was overthrown in 2014 under the Yanukovych government. And in order to put that back, we need to also get rid of the banderites that are there, that is effectively willing to shoot people in the face if they don't go with your political distribution. Meaning, because it seems like otherwise you're put in this position that the moment that you stop, they refill with weapons. Europe may put in troops. Like, you get this kind of rump state that's a platform to attack Russia again. Don't you have to solve that? And don't you solve that by effectively getting rid of the lunatics and whack jobs that are in Kiev? It's like, aren't you stuck with that as a military objective?
Yeah, but they're what do they have to work with? Not much. And the people that the neo-Nazis that are there, they're dwindling because they're going to be I think the Ukrainian people want to get back to life, and the whole politics of things, I think, are going to be secondary to survival at that point. Yeah, they may get help from the West, and whatever remains of Ukraine will probably look westward. There's no question about that. I don't think Putin has designs to take over all of Ukraine. He has so stated. So I think that's. But to do a counter 2014 coup, he would have to get somebody to run and that's sympathetic to Russia, and that wants to look eastward once again to pick up where Yanukovych left off. In fact, that's what prompted the 2014 coup, right. That he refused to join the EU, but instead wanted to join the Eurasian Economic Union of Russia, and that's what set things off. Thanks, with a lot of help from the CIA and Victoria Nuland and Boris Johnson.
When you were in the Defense Department, I mean, you had to deal with the CIA. Did you see them come up with designs around overthrowing governments? Like, for example, the National Endowment for Democracy is apparently back. And as part of it, it is now under the State Department. It's not a thing unto itself. China, Cuba is back on the list. There's notion of regime change in regards to these countries. Did you see the way they organized and schemed around getting rid of these governments that they didn't particularly like these, I guess, war plans, the behind the scenes things that they were taking place. I know you're in the Defense Department, not the CIA, but I would imagine there was overlap on some of this stuff.
We work daily with the agency, and yeah, there was a plan. Take for example, 2003 with Iraq, the overthrow of Iraq. What was the plan? That was to invade Iraq, overthrow Saddam Hussein, use Iraq as a hub, then for regime change in Iran, Damascus, Libya, even Saudi Arabia at that time, all countries
Really?
that were opposed to Israel.
Even
That was
Saudi
the plan.
Arabia. Wow. We've
Yeah,
come a
at that
long way.
time they were you know, they had the Wahhabis at that time. They were very closely aligned with Al Qaeda.
Right.
Saddam had a relationship with Al Qaeda, not a very strong one, but somewhat of one. The intelligence minister of Saudi Arabia at that time was always traveling to Pakistan to visit with bin Laden. And in fact, he made a deal with bin Laden, gave him a bribe not to attack Saudi Arabia. So you see, you do have in the portions of in a certain portion of Saudi Arabia, which is predominantly the oil producing area, that's all Shia. That's not Sunni.
Mm-hmm.
It's in a Shia area. But it's very much controlled by the regime itself because of the concerns that you're going to have uprisings in that area, and they've had some in the past. So it's going to be, but Saudi Arabia now is working hard at trying to change its image, and we're seeing that. Notwithstanding the fact that Khashoggi was butchered, literally butchered.
Bonesaw.
Yeah. Oh wow. But
It's there for love.
But you see, Trump seems to have a different approach. The human rights notion and all that, that's all secondary, tertiary to making deals and trying to keep relationships going. He believes in big power politics. And if you're an autocrat, I'll deal with you. If you're head of a democratic government, I'll deal with you. But he's a businessman, so he claims that that's his excuse, and he'll work with anybody. But when you start putting preconditions for political relationships, as we have under the Democrat administration, such as adherence to human rights before we deal with you, you're going to get nowhere. And we experienced that with China. In fact, when Blinken first met the Chinese, when Biden administration came in, they were lectured by the Chinese. Don't tell us how to run things in our own country.
Yep.
And he basically sent Blinken back with his tail between his legs.
I remember that speech because Blinken gave some weirdo red speech, and China was like, "You are not our superiors. You're not better than us." I mean, they ate the riot act. I have never seen anything like that where American diplomat was talked down to.
They didn't know how to respond.
Yeah. One last thing before I let you go. I've been getting people's opinions, and I do this on my show because sometimes I don't know. And when I don't think I know and I don't have an answer for it, I tend to just ask and get different points of view. There is a lot of reporting that there is a turn in the relationship between Trump and Netanyahu. I would celebrate this if I believe this was true. I don't know this to be true. There's certain things that may hint at it. For example, Trump making the deal with Ansar Allah, basically, don't attack us. We won't attack you. You can attack Israel if you need to, but don't leave our ships out of it. There was the going behind, sidelining Israel in order to get the American hostage out, something that Joe Biden could have did, but he was too weak and incompetent to do. There was sidelining Israel in order to, I guess, having peace talks with Hamas. There was that. Apparently, there's reporting that AIPAC was being sidelined, that they were somewhat freaking out about the relationship between Trump and Netanyahu, that it went down the toilet because A, Mike Waltz was a spy. B, it made it look as if Trump was being led around by Netanyahu, basically made him look weak, something that Trump's ego is not going to tolerate. I'm giving the white hat version of it, meaning the WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get version of it. There's a different version of it, but I'm giving this one to make the case of why people are saying that there has been a change in the relationship. What is your take on this? I mean, do you think this is a real break, a real disagreement? How do you view the reporting? Because look, the reporting from my point of view could just be leaks for political reasons. But do you take these leaks as being legitimate?
Well, when you hear about it from a number of sources, independent sources, you begin to believe it because the indications are there just by Trump's actions. He's avoiding Israel at this point. He's not even going to visit them, even though he's going to be in the region.
Right.
And he did go around. He was really, he felt that Netanyahu was trying to lead him into a war with Iran. He didn't want. And then you have the Israelis going so far as to say, well, maybe we'll do something on our own on a limited basis. Well, good luck to that. Then you'll expect the U.S. to pull your chestnuts out of the fire. It's not going to happen. In other words, the way Netanyahu was proceeding made Trump appear to be a lackey, to be Netanyahu's poodle, if you will.
Right.
And Trump's ego just would not support that. There's just no way. And also there were, two other previous incidents which have been long simmering that go way back that really set the relationship apart. In that, number one, the killing of Soleimani in 2020 was supposed to be a joint operation with Israel, and the Israelis pulled out at the last minute. That really upset Trump. And of course, that was on Netanyahu's watch. The second one was that Netanyahu was one of the first foreign leaders to congratulate Biden on his election in 2020, which Trump felt was rigged.
Yeah.
So, it's been a long simmering relationship, even though outwardly he wants to appear to be open. I'm also told he's not accepting. He's not talking to our U.S. ambassador to Israel right now.
Oh, what's his Huckabee?
Huckabee. So Huckabee apparently has been trying to get a hold of him, and he's not talking to him either. So I think it's and the last thing that I just heard, Trump said he would recognize a Palestinian state.
That's not true, though. They came out and pointed out, they said, this is not true. Like the administration was like, this is decisively not true. Now, what it could be, though, is it may be more
complicated. If they're saying that he didn't say it, even though he said it, the fact that he's back in Saudi Arabia going to make about $1 trillion in deals, he's going to do the bidding of the Saudis who insist upon recognition of a two-state solution, period.
Well,
you think after all that, after agreeing to an influx of $1 trillion, Trump's going to say, "Oh, by the way, I don't agree with your two-state solution"? I don't think so.
I wouldn't be shocked if they try to. So, Drop Zone News has been reporting on this. Drop Zone News, Ryan Grimm's channel, was saying that Trump was working behind the scenes with Hamas in order to come up with a settlement for the war.
Yeah,
and the settlement was going to be this kind of overarching thing with humanitarian support. But Hamas didn't trust the U.S. administration for obvious reasons, right? But that they were working on some kind of deal behind the scenes. Maybe that's what the papers are referring to. I don't know.
Well, that's probably one of many things, because Witkoff himself has said, "Look, if you're gonna deal with the enemy, you got to go talk to him."
Right.
And he's done that. He did that with Russia, and apparently he was the intermediary with Hamas.
Yeah.
And he probably met them in Oman or some neutral place, Qatar, and they had a chat, and they came in had an agreement on this young man, Alexander. So, I think Trump will do what he needs to do rather than hold ideological preconditions as obstacles to get something done. because he needs successes. He needs to be able to show successes. He's thinking about politically internally here that we've got midterms coming up very shortly, and all that the Democrats can do is rant and rave and hold up a resistance and complain about everything. However, I have not heard one valid alternative to any of their complaints to how he's proceeding on any front, whether it's tariffs, Russia, Ukraine. They have offered no alternatives, substantive alternatives, except jump up and down, complain, sing songs, stand in the way of law enforcement. That's their mantra. What Americans see that that's not a policy position.
Look, I would tell you, I agree with you on the Ukraine thing. I agree with you. We had Joe Biden as this genocide was taking place. They didn't do anything different. Joe Biden didn't try to get this hostage out. Joe Biden didn't seem to try to get a deal at all.
He didn't do anything.
Meaning, if he's working behind the scenes to try to get a deal with Hamas, okay, that's far more than the Biden administration even came close to doing. Yeah. The Ukraine thing, at the very least, he has the tenor of trying to end the war or wanting to end it in a way that, again, the Biden administration, Harris, just wanted to keep the war going indefinitely.
Again, that's an ideological thing from the neocons to contain Russia.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's just astonishing. They had no plan. Just keep going. Yeah, so I agree with you on those. I'm equivocal with some of the other stuff, but on the big items, yeah, I agree with you. They don't have any ideas. They have no plans.
None.
They put nothing forward.
How can they win elections on that? But so their answer is to agitate, to resist, to demonstrate. That doesn't offer constructive alternatives.
I think their plan is Trump is going to mess it up so bad that we're just going to point to him and say, see, he's that bad, vote us in. And I don't know if that's going to work.
They don't have the interests of the country at heart. Why don't they work with him to make things happen and make things right? Then they can take credit for helping him rather than constantly resisting him and fighting him and calling him names.
Come on, Michael. You know it doesn't work that way. When Obama was in office,
just suggesting an alternative for them,
Well, I agree with you that they should have an alternative. Where's that Project 2025, right? Where's your New Deal with America or your contract with America like Newt Gingrich came out with? They could do that. They just don't. I don't think they care all that much. I think in their minds, we don't have to do anything anymore. We have a mathematical advantage in regards to demographics. We see how far that got you in this election. And we will win in perpetuity, regardless of whether we do anything or not. I really do think they just don't care.
The Republicans or the Democrats?
Either, frankly, if I'm being honest with you.
Well, I think the country is in a precarious position right now, to be honest with you. We at 36 trillion, there's no way we can recover unless we do some very serious work. Agreed. And if they want to go on as business as usual, they're throwing this country into the toilet.
Agreed. We agree on that. We're getting close on agreement. Thank you for this, Michael. I really appreciate it, man. Michael Maloof. Michael Maloof, he's a former senior security policy analyst in the Office of Secretary of Defense, author, regular contributing analyst on RT and other media outlets. He has nearly 30 years of federal service in the U.S. Department of Defense. And Michael, every time you open your mouth, the numbers went up. We're up to over 600 people.
They're good.
You've been doing well, man. Thank you for this. I really appreciate it. You be safe, okay?
You too. Take care.
All right. We shout out to Michael Maloof. That's my man. He's fantastic. Whether we agree or not, doesn't really matter. I appreciate his commentary and I appreciate his point of view.